On the surface, the Trump family story sounds like the American dream fulfilled, an immigrant's hope, a self-made fortune, and even the presidency. But peel back the gold embossed layers and a darker narrative emerges. It's a saga of high-stakes gambles, manipulated images, and guarded secrets passed down through generations. We're about to journey through the Trump dynasty's rise, from a humble German village to the pinnacle of power, and at what cost. One thing is certain, you don't build an empire like this by playing it safe or by the rules. Our story begins in 1885 when 16-year-old Friedrich Trump left his village in Germany with little more than a dream. He arrived in America as a barber's apprentice, but the young Friedrich had bigger ambitions. He soon ventured west to the Klondike gold rush, not to dig for gold himself, but to profit off the miners who did. Friedrich set up hotels and restaurants at the edge of the Alaskan and Canadian frontier, offering hearty meals, liquor, and rooms for ladies, a euphemism for prostitution. In the Yukon, his Arctic hotel in Bennett catered to prospectors seeking a hot meal and other pleasures. The establishment even openly advertised its accommodations for single men and the gold they carried. Business was booming. Trump's places ran around the clock, serving miners with money to spend. Crucially, Friedrich knew when to get out. In 1901, as local authorities prepared to crack down on gambling and brothels, he sold off his stake and left the Yukon, walking away rich before the law closed in. As one biographer noted, in a situation where many went bust, Friedrich Trump managed to emerge a winner. He returned to Germany, a wealthy man, and quickly married his childhood neighbor, Elizabeth. But the German authorities remembered his draft-dodging emigration. They banished him for avoiding military service, forcing the couple to sail back to America. In New York City, Friedrich Trump settled with his wife and children, investing in real estate and operating a small hotel in Queens. In 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic claimed his life. Yet he had already laid the foundation of the Trump fortune and a family ethos that bold risks and shrewd opportunism could yield great rewards. Friedrich's middle son, Fred Trump, took that foundation and built it even higher. Born in 1905 in Queens, Fred was only 13 when his father died, but he inherited Friedrich's relentless drive. From the Great Depression through World War II, Fred Trump mastered the art of government-subsidized building. He won contracts to build homes for Navy personnel, and after the war, developed vast apartment complexes for returning veterans, all backed by federal loans and tax breaks. Fred had a Midas touch in real estate, rising to become one of New York's wealthiest landlords by the 1960s. But he also had a reputation for cutthroat frugality and rule-bending. He had no qualms about bending rules to pad his profits. For example, he would inflate construction costs to justify higher government reimbursements, effectively pocketing extra money from programs meant to help average home buyers. It was technically legal, but it gouged taxpayers and tenants while boosting the Trump bottom line. By the early 1970s, Fred Trump's empire of middle-income housing was thriving, yet his sharp practices were catching up with him. In 1973, the U.S. Justice Department sued Fred and his company, with his son Donald, now a top executive, for racial discrimination in their rental properties. Testers found that black applicants were told no apartments were available, while white applicants with similar credentials were offered leases. Fred, true to form, fought the case hard before eventually settling without admitting wrongdoing. The stain lingered. The Trumps had to adopt new practices to desegregate their rentals. It was an early glimpse of a Trump pattern: deny wrongdoing, settle quietly, and move forward. Despite scandals, Fred Trump's hard-nosed formula made him enormously rich. He poured these values into his children, especially Donald, whom he saw as his heir. "You are a killer or a loser," Fred often told them, and Donald fully absorbed that creed. By the time Fred retired in the 1980s, handing the business to Donald, the stage was set for a new chapter of the dynasty, one that would carry the Trump name from the brick-and-mortar streets of Queens to the glamorous heights of Manhattan and eventually the global arena. If Fred was the engineer, Donald J. Trump would become the showman. Born in 1946, Donald grew up in wealth, a kid from Queens who rode in limousines but hungered for Manhattan glamour. Backed by his father's money and political connections, Donald set out to make the Trump name bigger than ever. He likes to say he started with just a small loan of $1 million from his dad, but in truth, Fred bankrolled his ventures to the tune of hundreds of millions. An investigation later revealed Fred had covertly given his son over $400 million through loans and trusts, far more than Donald ever acknowledged. With that hefty head start, Donald began crafting his own empire. In the 1970s, Trump struck his first big deal, transforming a derelict hotel next to Grand Central Station into the Grand Hyatt. He then built Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in 1983, a golden skyscraper that became the ultimate symbol of 1980s extravagance. By his mid-40s, Donald Trump was a New York celebrity, a flashy real estate mogul with a supermodel wife, his name in gossip columns, and a reputation as a brash, larger-than-life deal-maker. Crucial to Donald's rise was an uncanny talent for self-promotion. He even masqueraded as his own publicist on phone calls, using fake names like John Barron to plant flattering stories about himself in the press. Outlandish as it was, this tactic kept the Trump name in the news. Good or bad publicity, it didn't matter so long as people were talking about Trump. By 1990, Trump's overextended empire began to collapse. His lavish Trump Taj Mahal casino went bankrupt in 1991, and eventually 6 Trump companies filed for Chapter 11 in the 1990s and 2000s. Each time, Trump shrugged it off as savvy strategy.
Bankrupt, by the way, I have never. But out of hundreds of deals,
but sir,
excuse me,
that's your line. But your companies have gone bankrupt.
Out of what am I saying?
Using the laws to his benefit.
$900 million. Your empire was pretty
much more than that.
You owed more than that?
975 was personally guaranteed. That was just the small part. That was the harder debt. But I owed many, many billions of dollars. And now my company is much bigger and stronger than it was in the 80s.
In practice, many investors and lenders took heavy losses while Trump himself survived and rebuilt. Banks often restructured his loans instead of foreclosing, figuring the Trump brand was worth preserving. Remarkably, Trump's celebrity emerged intact.
Ivana.
What will people think?
It's wrong, isn't it?
But it feels so right.
Then it's a deal?
He spun his setbacks into tales of comeback, even authoring a book called The Art of the Comeback.
The business book is how to become successful, how to come back from adversity, how to handle adversity, and I think it's something that really people want to read, as you can see by what you're seeing right now.
By the late 1990s, he had reinvented himself as more than a developer. He was a brand. He licensed the Trump name to hotels and casinos he didn't actually own, lent his persona to products from steaks to vodka, and kept his profile alive with frequent TV appearances. Donald Trump had become synonymous with big money and bigger ego, a man who would do anything to stay in the spotlight. Donald Trump's biggest rebrand came in 2004 with the debut of The Apprentice. In this reality TV show, Trump played the role of America's toughest boss, presiding over a competition of aspiring entrepreneurs. Each week, in front of millions of viewers, he dramatically fired someone and in the end hired the winner. The show was a sensation. It portrayed Trump as a brilliant, decisive CEO, the ultimate business authority, and it etched
You're fired.
into the American lexicon. The Apprentice reinvented Trump's public image and introduced him to a new generation as a savvy dealmaker and fatherly titan of industry. This newfound fame set the stage for Trump's entry into politics on a scale no one anticipated. Many observers dismissed the idea of President Trump as a publicity stunt at first, but Trump tapped into a vein of public anger. He trafficked in provocative rhetoric, even pushing the false birther conspiracy about President Obama, and promised to make America
great again.
His blunt anti-establishment style shocked the political class, but resonated with disaffected voters. Media coverage, whether scandalized or amused, only amplified his message. In a crowded field, Trump's flair for controversy gave him endless free publicity, an estimated $6 billion worth during the campaign, and made him the center of attention. He turned outrage into political momentum. Riding this wave, Trump stunned the world by winning the 2016 election. It was one of the biggest upsets in U.S. political history. He didn't just defeat Democrat Hillary Clinton, he defied the polls, the pundits, and even many in his own Republican Party. Trump had tapped into deep frustrations with the status quo, promising to fight for the forgotten men and women and to upend a system he called rigged. To his base, it was a revolution. To his critics, a national nightmare had come to pass. Either way, the showman from Queens was now President of the United States. Once in the Oval Office, President Trump continued to do things his way, smashing political norms and dominating the news cycle. He communicated primarily through Twitter and raucous rallies, bypassing traditional media filters. When the press reported facts he didn't like, he denounced them as fake news and even the enemy of the American people. He insisted he was draining the swamp of DC corruption, even as he installed family members and wealthy insiders in key posts. He painted himself as the voice of the people, railing against a shadowy deep state he claimed was undermining his presidency from within. To supporters, this was refreshing candor, a president saying exactly what he thought. To detractors, it felt like democracy itself was being toyed with. Trump had promised to end endless wars and bring back jobs with an America First approach. In office, he did avoid launching new wars, but America's ongoing conflicts did not exactly end. He talked up economic victories as well. Unemployment hit record lows at one point, but his signature policies, like big tax cuts, largely benefited corporations and the wealthy. In short, many of his populist promises collided with reality once he was in power. Investigations also swirled around him. A special counsel probed whether Trump's 2016 campaign conspired with Russia's election meddling. The inquiry found plenty of dubious contacts between Trump associates and Russians, but not enough evidence to charge an outright criminal conspiracy. U.S. intelligence had no doubt that Moscow worked to help Trump win, a fact Trump angrily dismissed as a witch hunt.
Well, I respect the move, but the entire thing has been a witch hunt.
And proof of a supposed deep state plot against him. True or not, the Russia saga cast a lingering shadow over his presidency. After 4 turbulent years, Trump faced the voters again in 2020 and was defeated by Democrat Joe Biden, losing the presidency after a single term. Yet Trump refused to exit quietly. He insisted, without evidence, that the 2020 election had been stolen from him through massive fraud. Courts and officials, including many Republicans, repeatedly confirmed the vote was legitimate. But Trump's relentless false claims convinced a large number of his followers. Tensions exploded on January 6, 2021. When a mob of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol, trying to overturn the election by force. It was a shocking attack on American democracy, fueled by conspiracy theory that Trump himself had stoked. Defying political norms and the weight of his own tumultuous history, Donald Trump staged an unprecedented comeback, securing a second term as president in the 2024 election. His return to the Oval Office was marked by a renewed vigor to implement his America First vision, but the landscape had shifted, and with it, the challenges he faced. One of the most pressing issues on the global stage was the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Throughout his campaign, Trump had vowed to broker a swift peace deal, promising to leverage his purported negotiation prowess to end the bloodshed.
If I was president, there would not have been a war with Russia in Ukraine. 0 chance, and Lindsay would be happy with that. That's better than any alternative. Wouldn't have happened.
However, the reality proved far more complex. In the early months of 2025, the Trump administration proposed a peace plan aimed at establishing a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. The plan was met with resistance from Moscow, with Russian officials stating they could not accept the terms in its current form. This rejection underscored the limited progress made and cast doubt on Trump's ability to fulfill his campaign promise of ending the conflict swiftly. Complicating matters further, President Trump's relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin became increasingly strained. In a public statement, Trump expressed being very angry with Putin, particularly over the latter's questioning of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's credibility, a move that Trump believed could delay ceasefire negotiations. Despite these tensions, there were glimmers of hope. General Keith Kellogg, serving as the U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine, indicated that the warring parties were inching closer to a ceasefire. Yet, the path to peace remained fraught with obstacles, and the anticipated resolution continued to elude the administration. Domestically, Trump's second term was characterized by aggressive economic policies, notably the implementation of sweeping reciprocal tariffs on a range of foreign imports. Announced on April 2nd, these tariffs aim to counteract trade barriers imposed on U.S. goods by other nations. While intended to bolster American manufacturing, critics warned of potential economic repercussions, including increased consumer costs and strained international relations. As the months unfolded, the complexities of international diplomacy and domestic policy tested the resilience of Trump's leadership. The promised ceasefire in Ukraine remained elusive, and the ripple effects of protectionist economic measures began to manifest. The grand promises of swift resolutions and economic revitalization faced the harsh scrutiny of reality, leaving the nation and the world watching closely as the Trump administration navigated these turbulent waters. From a Yukon brothel to the Oval Office, the Trump's rise is as astonishing as it is controversial. It's a tale of ambition and audacity, but also of deception and division. Each generation climbed higher by bending the rules and shaping public perception. Friedrich catered to vice and got rich quietly. Fred exploited loopholes in housing programs to build an empire. And Donald mastered modern media and misinformation to vault from reality TV to the White House. Around the world, Trump's political style, the brash populism, the disdain for facts, the cult of personality, has found imitators, but also sparked backlash and vigilance. In the end, the Trump dynasty's legacy may be a warning. The family proved that a cleverly crafted narrative, repeated often and loudly, can overwhelm facts and propel an individual to great heights of power. But the chaos and conflict that followed showed the peril of ruling by spectacle and conspiracy. The Trumps revealed something profound about our world, how easily reality can be bent by those who wield the power of a story, for better or for worse.